This week, we've got a breakdown segment where we talk about curiosity and your key to getting answers. We go over our articles on leadership, communication, and innovation. We're going to talk about what it takes to be a great product manager, what cybersecurity chiefs can learn from Warren Buffett, and getting the first 15% right, along with the news you need to know, SolarWinds, Verizon, Sextera, and Arctic Wolf, all on today's episode.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show about security startups, how to secure your startup, and advice for security startups. It's Business Security Weekly.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by, do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested these public assets? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. It's episode number 69, and it's Friday, January 12th, 2018. It's getting recorded up at G-Unit Studios where it is cold outside. I am Michael Santarcangelo, and joining me is Paul Asadorian, and he's in a warm studio, but I'm pretty sure it's cold up where you are, right, Paul?
Yeah, I'm in a warm studio where I can wear a hat and a t-shirt. It's kind of a weird getup I got going on, but, you know, it is...
It's a look, man. I like it.
It's episode... Apparently it's episode 69 and we're talking about Sextera. Is Sextera? What is that?
I might have even said it wrong. It was one of those, how do you even pronounce it? It's and we'll talk about it. I looked at it and I was like, I don't understand. So
well, our good friend Dave Itel has companies got acquired, and it sounds like a happy thing, which is nice. Yeah,
when we break into it, it looks like it's one of those, okay, this is a good situation. It actually looks like it's the ideal situation for a lot of people, so it's exciting. And I think people will see we're making a transition over to Business Security Weekly. Awesome new logo, and we kept the kick and song. So
yeah, we're not changing that song. We love the song.
No, it's good. We talked one time about doing a dance off. One day we'll have to do that.
But, you'll be here in studio next week, which would be nice.
I will be in the studio next week, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, there's so much good stuff going on, and that's exciting. Let's talk quick about our friends at itpro.tv. If you go to itpro.tv, startup security, use the code SS30. Try it free 7 days. Get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. And you can learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution and get a free demo of their supervisor portal. That's one of the things, too, we're going to keep looking at is pulling out some of the things that we like about it. I've enjoyed the stories that we've gotten about people that enjoy our partners and have tested out some of these things and taken a look at it. They're one of the models that I like, especially when we look at training and development and investing in people and everything else. And so hope you take a look. Let us know which ones you like, and we're going to start doing some of the same.
Yeah, so. And I mean, it's great for security professionals. Like, everyone wants to learn Metasploit, and that's cool. You should spend time learning some really cool security tools that definitely, plays into your strategy. I tend to believe that too many people kind of focus on that a little too much, and you should expand your horizons. Keith Hillett was just talking about some developer training that he was going to do with IT Pro TV because they had a training module on some new framework that he wanted to learn and was excited to delve into that. So, a lot of times we talk about very security-focused training, but they have that as well as other modules as well, which can help your career, which I think is great.
Yeah, and they've launched in a BizPro, so they're looking at things like communication and leadership and value and stuff, and so it's good, it's exciting. All right, well, so here's what we're going to try today. We keep working on the programming, and we're listening. And I know a lot of you have written in, and you've given us questions to pursue and things to take a look at, and I can tell you that we're on it. We're looking at it, and there's a lot of exciting stuff, and we're going to start adding some writing into it, which is really exciting for me. And we intend to continue to be responsive to that. So one of the other things that's happened is people have given us good questions along the way, and we're going to start testing out some new segments. I don't know if we're going to keep calling this the breakdown segment or not. I always like that idea of breaking something down and then building it back up. I liked it as a concept. But what we're going to talk about here today is answers. So we talk a lot about questions. And I'm not going to change off of this idea that a powerful question asked is more powerful. It's greater than knowing the correct answer. And that's interesting because a lot of times, right? Think about this, Paul. People in our industry, we love being the smartest person in the room. And I hear that a lot. Oh, I was the smartest person in the room. Oh, I got to deal with the smartest person in the room. But I kind of like being the dumbest person in the room. I guess it comes natural for me. But, we talk a lot about asking better questions. And what I've started to notice is sometimes people aren't then sure how to get the answers. And that's what I think I want to focus on today.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a difference. All right, so here's the thing. We talk about straight talk, and you've been great about talking about this as well. It breaks down to 5 questions. At some point, I will try to give us a straight talk primer for the network. And if you're one of our audience members, we'll get it to you. But there's 5 basic problems. And if you've been with me for a while, they're kind of reordered. So I'm just touching them quick because I want to focus on answers. But these questions are unbelievably powerful. And I'll tell you what, they work if you're selling. They work if you're on a security team trying to solve a problem. They work if you've got a family or people in your life. So they're not limited. First one is, what problem are you trying to solve? And that's actually where we're going to focus today because I'll tell you what, it sounds easy to ask and it is really elusive to get right. So we're going to focus on that. Second question, these come in order. What value does the solution create? Now, there's nuances when you start breaking down problem. We're not going to go into that today. We're just going to talk about how to get some answers. But once you've got it figured out, and this is the stuff that Paul and I have been talking about relative to thinking about the brain audit and looking at never split the difference. Third question you asked then is about impact. Impact is always going to be about friction. If you solve a problem, but the impact is you piss everybody off, or you create all sorts of new process, or you change the way everything was working and it doesn't work out better, that's not a good impact. On the other side, the impact of the solution is I've solved this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. That's actually really good. Then, right, and those 3 form a value proposition. If you want to get to straight talk, you then have to ask, how are we going to measure this? And then are we ready? And by the way, when you ask that last question, most people are like, yes, no, I don't know. And so obviously there's nuance to these. And so that's what I want to do. I want to get into not so much about asking those, not worrying about perspectives and rounds and all the other pieces that make up your ability to get to straight talk. But when you ask those questions, how do you get the answers? So without leading too much, I mean, Paul, when you ask those questions, because you're good, you ask these a lot. Like, for example, when you ask people what problem are they trying to solve, what do you find is their most common answer?
The most common answer I get is, well, our solution does this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, hold on. Step back. Think about my question. I do, and it's hard because I do want to know what your solution does in this particular scenario, right? I do want to know that. But first, I want to know what problem you're solving and more about like why you're trying to solve that problem. The like how should come after. And that's a shift, I think, in the way that maybe our brains work. Maybe we're trained. I'm not sure why. For example, when you go into a trade show or ask someone what problem you're trying to solve, that they immediately jump into, well, we use AI and machine learning to, do correlation and detect indicators of compromise. Like, no, that's not the answer to the question I was asking.
Yep. Yeah, and you and I have done that when we walked the show floor and we've asked it. And that's the thing, I get a lot of people that are like, oh, I love asking that question. That's so exciting. It's great. And then I say, cool. So, what's the answer? Oh, no, I mean, I love that question. Like, that's great. Like, I ask that a lot. And it's like, right, but there's more to it than that. And that's what I get a lot too. The other thing I'll notice when you're asking these questions, especially what problem you're trying to solve, we go compound really fast. It's big. I mean, there's just so much, and there's so much to get our heads wrapped around. And when I push back, I've got a lot of people that have come back to me, Paul, and they've said, well, Michael, and I swear, I got to tell you, anytime you start with, Michael, or, well, Michael, that's code for, I'm going to try to BS you, and I'm really hoping this one works. Well, security is complex. That's the way security is. Nope. Everything can get broken down to the constituent parts, always. So here's the way we start doing it. And this is actually one of my favorite techniques. The 5 whys. I mean, we both have small kids, so we live this technique. And there's a way to do it a little differently. Here's the basis of it, and then I'll give you a couple pointers on it, and then we can talk about how it works if you want. You basically ask why 5 times to get to the root cause. So the idea when you're problem solving or you're asking what problem are we trying to solve, is you want to get down to the root cause. You want to focus on something that's correct. Now, there's a couple more pieces to this and why 5 whys works. Everybody needs to be on the same page. So the other thing I'll hear sometimes is, well, isn't it obvious? No. Nope. Not obvious. Try again. Or I already know the problem. The problem is those stupid people don't understand blah, 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 blah. No, okay. Yep. Wow. Okay. Let's pull the emotion out. So when you get 5 whys, you start by basically asking, okay, why is XYZ a problem, or why is XYZ happening? And then you listen to the answer. That's going to be the trick to this too. You're going to have to listen to whatever answer or answers are given. As those answers work out, as you get through it, then you say, okay, well, why? Kind of like, why is that a problem, or why did that happen? You could usually get there in 5 whys. Sometimes it takes more. The trick to it, though, is that you want to keep restating it. So it's not why. It's not even cute to try to sound like the 3-year-old asking the question. You're asking, okay, so why did that happen? Boom. Now, some things to think about. You want to avoid the assumptions. That's tough. The logic traps too, right? Confirmation biases and other types of things. Well, isn't it obvious why it happened? It happened because of, nope, stop. I also don't like blaming people, with one exception, and we'll get to that in a second. In fact, I'll get to it right now. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get down to a broken process or an alterable behavior. So what I mean by that is, it's not, people are stupid. I didn't understand. You also want to get away from, well, isn't it obvious? We didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough time. We didn't have the right resources. I didn't have the right skill set. Those are all excuses. Those aren't real answers. If you have the process in place, right? And we talk about process a lot in this program. If you have the process in place, or you understand the behavior set, then you can take a look at it. And it's almost always comes down to a process somewhere didn't work, or a behavior didn't happen. But that doesn't mean people are bad or things are wrong or whatever else. And then if you get down to it and you want to try to then start focusing on solutions, switch why with how. And just keep asking it iteratively till you get where you want. Now, there's a lot of nuance to it, because this is another one of those things, just like asking the problem. We do this in a lot of the workshops I do, Paul, and we bring people through it. And here's my best advice. Go to the whiteboard and write it up as you're tracking it. And I would say by your 3rd time through, it will start to click. And then once it does, you're off to the races. This is not hard to use. It's just not used very often. Have you done it? Have we done 5 whys yet together at any point?
I don't think so.
All right. So we can, we'll do it. And I'll tell you what, if people have an example, like if you go, I put in a link to Wikipedia, and it talks like about, so this came out of Lean, came out of Toyota, and it was like, okay, so there's a recall because the brakes are failing. Okay. Why are the brakes failing? The brakes are failing because the control circuit didn't work. Okay. Why is the control and he kind of gets down to, well, it wasn't tested. It wasn't designed that way. It wasn't, right? And you go, okay, cool. All right, well, can we fix that? Yeah. All right, well, how do we fix that? Well, we put in, right? So you can, if you work down to the root cause, you can work back up. By the way, think about this, because you just said this is really important. How you do it is really important after I understand the problem you're trying to solve. And that's always the trick for people, right? There's a solution to the problem, and then there's your solution to the problem. I want to understand the problem first, and 5 whys does it. The other thing you can do, and there are some specific tricks for parts of these, right? Looking at value and impact have some tricks, but just generically, when you ask questions of people, if you can first remember to pause, but then you come back and you try to get this figured out, and you can do the 5 W's and how. If you were in grade school or primary school at any point, you probably did this, right? Who, what, where, when, why, and how. What's great is if you're writing, you can use that as a fantastic outline. And if you're just trying to figure out a presentation, use that for your outline. You're trying to get answers to this. So like if you start saying, so let's do, this is how I like to do this a lot too. If you don't do 5 whys, what problem are you trying to solve? People will throw something at me, Paul. And then what I'll say is, okay, well, who's experiencing that problem? And they'll, it's blah, 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 blah group. Okay, great. So what does it look like when it happens? Can you describe that experience to me? Like, how do we know it's a problem? And I might jump to how, and they'll start talking about it. And by the way, that's, if there was any trick out of this, if the 5 whys is elusive to you, just ask who's experiencing the problem, when does it happen, what's the experience like, and like how do we know it's a problem? Like either something they told us, something they did, whatever else. But that's it. That's all you're asking. Now, there's something that's pretty interesting about this. You start with what? When you look at brain audit stuff, when you look at everything else, if you want people to be on the same page, start with what? What's going on? What's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the situation? What's the evidence of it? That type of stuff. Now, we've got an article that we're going to talk about where they say start with why. Simon Sinek wrote a great book, said start with why. Said people want to know why you're doing things. Totally agree. Except, in this case, if you want everybody on the same page, you start with what. because that brings us to talking about the same thing, and it gives people a chance, if they're not on the same page as you, to get it kind of squared up. Do you do this at all? Do you do the five W's?
I think
Or, beyond helping your kids with homework?
Well, I think without knowing it, certainly when we do briefing calls, I think why is important to get to the uniqueness of the solution, which I think many people don't get to that quickly enough, or to even know what some of their uniqueness is, to take a page right out of the brain audit. But when you and I start with those why questions, like, well, why is that a problem? And why haven't we solved that yet? Or why doesn't this other thing solve that problem? And after you get through like a series of those why questions, you're like, there's your uniqueness. Now I get it.
Bingo.
Now we got something
Bingo.
to work on.
Yeah, and let's be fair. Let's talk about this for a second too, in terms of security. So you and I take a fair number of briefings, and when people are trying to do their value proposition, the way that most people have learned to do it is they make some broad statement. They don't ask a question. They make some broad statement about that, like, all data is sensitive, or all companies are getting breached and it could be catastrophic. Oh, please stop. Right. So I don't know the problem you're trying to solve. What, stop breaches? Or have we stopped car accidents and bank robberies yet? That's not realistic. And then they go immediately to some sort of statistics, right? The average cost of a breach is $6.9 million. But this isn't the lottery, folks. Or the cost per record is this, or Target CEO lost his job. Like, that's automatically going to get me to eye roll. But what I'll do sometimes is I'll say, yeah, that's actually not accurate, right? That's a perception survey, and there was no statistical evidence in that. And so I don't think your number's right, because I've never seen an organization who did that. And you hear that deadpan silence. I'm like, so did I just kill your value prop? And they're like, I go, all right, let's try again. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And what I find a lot of times is they'll say, well, it's around the SOC, or it's around automation, or it's around, and I go, great. That's still too high level for me. Who are you helping? Who specifically is dealing with this? Can you tell me what their experience is like? And then you guys have heard me use this phrase before, the better tomorrow. If they were to work with you, or you know what, let's take you out of the mix for a second. If they could solve that, what does their better tomorrow look like? Because sometimes the way that you figure out what the actual problem is you tell me what you want the outcome to be. I mean, beyond the whole, I'd like $1 million. I don't want to work 40 hours a week. I want to work 30 hours a week. I want to have a Porsche when I drive to work. Like, yeah, great. There's a lot of stuff that we want. But when we start thinking about it and breaking it down, what this does is it gives us context. And you can ask it a couple times, right? What happens when this happens? The other question I love to ask about what problem you're trying to solve? What happens if we do nothing? People don't like that question, by the way, because a lot of times we've built up our identity based on the problem, or we've built up our importance based on the problem. But sometimes, what the right answer is? Nothing bad happens. Okay, so it annoys you, and it kind of sucks, but it's not really a big deal. Yep. So people don't really like that. So here's what happens then too. So what I've started working with is both security teams and sales reps and marketing. And what they want to know is, okay, but how do I actually use this? So here's what happens, right? I'll go in, Paul, and I'll say, all right, hey, what problem are you trying to solve? And you and I do this a lot, and we do this together. And so gosh, if you ever get a chance to talk with Paul and I at the same time, try to explain this to us, it would probably feel pretty intense to you, but we get really excited when we get down closer to that type of a problem. Okay, well, what are we doing? We're pushing back on stuff politely. We're asking questions. We're clarifying it as we go. If you try to use these questions and you expect that the first answer you get back is the correct answer, is the complete answer, I think you're going to be pretty disappointed. And if you use these as if you're one of those people at the mall, I don't go to the mall very often, but when I was younger, these are people at the mall with a clipboard and sir, do you just have a moment? I just want to ask you these 17 questions, but I'll give you a free movie ticket. At least, all right, I just dated myself, but that's what they used to do. So what we start taking a look at is there's a way to kind of nuance that question as it's going through. And one of the things I love to do is ask them two things, right? What problem are they trying to solve? So I ask the question again. I'll say, okay, that all sounds great. What I really want to understand though is what's the problem that you're trying to solve? And I give them a chance to reframe it, because now that they said it out loud, or I'll just say, all right, so what are you looking for? Here's where this comes in a lot. A lot of people in security today, Paul, they're looking for what we call influence without authority. And it's kind of fascinating, right? Because everybody outside of security, they think that if you're in security today, you've got all the money and all the power and whatever you say goes. And those of you that are in the enterprise security teams right now, I know that you're either rolling your eyes or crying because that is totally not the way that it works. And you've started to realize, yeah, that'd be great. So here's the way it really works. I need to go get these people excited. I need to understand how to influence these outcomes. I need to be able to work with them better and smarter. So what I find a lot of times then is that, for example, the reason I'll ask, so what's the problem that they're trying to solve or that you're trying to solve, is that I might have a need from a security perspective to increase our posture or to comply, meet with some compliance regulation or an audit or something else. So now I'm going to my business partner. If I just go, all right, so here's the problem I'm trying to solve, well, it doesn't always help me. The other thing that I find if I'm trying to clarify it is I actually ask them, like, what that compliance thing may not even be on their radar. I want to understand what's important to them. Is it customers? Is it right? So like you talk to a power company, if they're in power distribution, kind of keeping the power on is important to them. And that means they have to have a certain number of transformers in reserve, and they have to worry about certain safety things, and there's all sorts of stuff they have to do. If I come now and I try to jam them up with just an absolute ton of security things to do, they'd rather listen to Charlie Brown's teacher. It's just more exciting to them. And so what we need to start figuring out is what matters to them. And I'll give you a for example, Paul. With that power company, we actually went back to them and said, oh, I get it. That stuff's really important. What if this was the genesis of minimum viable security, by the way? We said, what if we could come back and we could give you the minimum set of things you needed to do? Nothing more. Everything we needed in terms of our compliance and everything else, but that frees you guys up to go focus on what you need to do. They went, yeah, that's awesome. When does that start? That'd be great. Paul, was no different. It was the same stuff. We just positioned it better because now we understood what mattered to them and what they saw as the solution. Their solution was, I really don't have time to deal with this stuff. If you guys can do more of it and make it easier for me, I'm in. Cool. We were able to do that. So to me, it's curiosity. The key to this, the key to getting this to work is curiosity. You've got to be willing to ask the questions, listen to what's said, and then follow up. And because most people end up struggling to actually define the problem, which means you're not going to get the right answers for the rest of it, you can use 5 Whys, you can use 5 Ws, or you can just keep clarifying and pushing back gently based on your experience. You and I do that a lot. Yeah, I don't really think that's a true statement though, right? So if that's not true, what happens there? I don't always recommend that for people, but it seems to work, at least for you and me. Do you have thoughts on this? Things that you do that make it easier for people to give you the answers and get to the right answers?
No, I mean, other than what you covered. No, I mean, other than what you covered, having just finished Never Split the Difference, I think that, that certainly really helps. And really what that book about is uncovering what someone sitting on the other side of the table, and that could be a hostage negotiation or any other kind of situation, is uncovering what, the other person is really after.
Yeah, right. And sometimes it feels like in security we're in that hostage negotiation situation. Let me make one more point on this, and then we'll take a quick break here and come back. But I started out by talking about trying to be the smartest person in the room. I do sometimes see people will use these questions as an opportunity to elicit how smart they are. Here's my simple advice. Don't. Embrace being uncomfortable not knowing the answer. I know a lot of times in security it's been browbeaten to is that we've got to know the answers. What I'm telling you based on experience, lots of experience, is if you can ask the question, sit with the uncomfortable silence for a minute or longer, but then work to get to the right solution. To me, it's the distinction between do you want to be right or do you want to get the right answer? If you can adopt the mindset that the right answer to the question is better than you being right, you will be amazed at the success consistently. So here's the thing. Try it out. Shoot us a note. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, which parts are working, which parts aren't working, and give us some other ideas for things that you want us to try to take a look at and break down. And we're going to keep doing that. And maybe I'll share some of the things we're working on there. But let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and get some more announcements. We'll get into our articles.